Hey, welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you, and thanks for checking out the channel. Hope you're doing fantastic out there in Heatland. If you guys could subscribe, that'd be great. Appreciate you stopping by. Also, subscribe to the WQAM YouTube page. You guys can watch Tobin and Leroy weekdays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pretty quiet day on the Jimmy Butler front as far as any news is concerned. The Miami Heat did lose to the LA Clippers, so they have one more game in this Jimmy Butler suspension. It's, as the Miami Herald reports, looking more and more likely like a Jimmy Butler return is set to occur. This is what they're telling their team, and we all really don't know how that's going to go. Very curious to see what the media campaign back and forth, how that's going to go with everything. Again, I don't think Jimmy Butler is going to like mother bleep the Heat in the media or anything like that when they get there. But it's really just a question of, what is. I'm fascinated to see like if he is genuinely playing on Friday night, what the hell is that going to be like? Today, the only story that was out there that was catching some fire was a really weird one by Jake Fisher from Mark Stein's Substack, which. No shade on the guy. I just thought that the story was, it didn't have a ton of juice to it, and some of the details were really weird on it, and I don't really exactly know how much I buy it or put much stock into it. It's one of those things where it's like, this is stuff, like it almost is like everybody's kind of trying to search for acorns on this because this is like the it story in the NBA right now. And I don't think any Heat fan who's really following this was like, oh my God, Jimmy Butler misses some shoot arounds and flies on jets. Like if you have a phone, you know that. But this is what Jake Fisher wrote. It said, Butler by one point was clearly established as the Heat unquestioned linchpin, essentially green lighted by the franchise to come and go as he pleased. I remember visiting Miami's morning shoot-around in Oklahoma City back in 2022. So that would have been, would that have been the 1 seed year? That would have been the finals year. Okay. So that would have been, that would have been the finals year. Excuse me. That would have been the finals year. Butler walked out prematurely with Kyle Lowry in lockstep. Mind you, this was before Butler's injuries and intermittent availability, according to league sources, became a source of tangible tension within the organization. I guess in that case, they would have been coming off an Eastern Conference Finals. Obviously was a year where he, dealt with his kind of normal allotment of injuries, but, we all know what they ended up doing in that season. Sources say even Lowry, who remains as close away from the court to anyone, as anyone to Butler, gradually grew fatigued by his teammates' headstrong tendencies on the court. Currently in his second season with his hometown Philadelphia 76ers, Lowry declined to comment last week when an interview was requested. I know a lot of it was made by this in social media about Butler or Lowry grew fatigued of Butler's. I don't even really understand what this means. His headstrong tendencies on the floor, like. Is headstrong, so like he was tired of him having the ball all the time. Like it just doesn't make a lot of sense when you read it. It's like if it was off the floor, could you be annoyed by some things? I know like there was an idea that Kyle Lowry wasn't the happiest down here in South Florida. Certainly rubbed some media members the wrong way. I never really had an issue with Kyle Lowry. I certainly never really had a bad interaction with Kyle Lowry. My only issue with Kyle Lowry was Kyle Lowry didn't shoot enough on the basketball court, and I felt like they could have used that from time to time. But I was never the biggest fan of Kyle Lowry's game. Like I wasn't thrilled that Kyle Lowry came down here. I think everybody who knows me knows I'm a huge Goran Dragic fan. It hurt a little bit to see somebody else wearing the number 7, but I found that to be an odd detail in this story, as I found many of the details in the story to be odd, because I'm like, I don't really know what to make of this. It's like you're saying things like, we'll go to the next one. This was another one that was weird. It said, this was talking about Max Strus and how Max Strus was like one of Butler's guys. And it said, among Butler's transgressions, according to league sources, have been multiple instances of skipping out on morning shoot-arounds altogether and insisting on private flights separate from Miami's team charter. In each of those cases, Miami drew clear lines in the sand in negotiations on new contracts with Strus, Vincent, and Martin, no matter their cohesion with Butler. A lot of the reason for the success in Miami is the chemistry they had, said one league figure with knowledge of the team's inner workings. All right. Those were Butler's guys, said another NBA source familiar with the Heat's thinking. Butler is said to have viewed Strus as a brother, someone who could match the All-Stars' sarcastic and some call it abrasive sense of humor. They hatched a celebrated handshake routine that featured on Instagram posts of them flipping each other off with a tongue-in-cheek zeal. That is true. We know about the old one-gun salute. Several people who knew that edition of the Heat well cited Strus as an instrumental figure in keeping Butler steady within the greater team dynamic. I definitely agree that Max Strus and Jimmy Butler had a good relationship. I don't know how many times Max Strus has like kept Jimmy Butler in check, like of an attitude outside of it. But I do think that there was certainly a point, especially the year where Jimmy got into it late with Eric Spoelstra. That was the year that they were the 1 seed, that there was eventually a change of the starting lineup, which I do think was probably influenced by Jimmy Butler, where he no longer wanted Duncan Robinson in the starting lineup and he put Max Strus in the starting lineup. And you could just note, like, there was a line like drawn in the sand at one point, and I think that there was just an idea that Jimmy wanted to play with Max Strus in the starting lineup and just thought that would bring another element to their team more so than Duncan Robinson did. True, very true that they had a fun sense of humor and they flipped each other off, and I agree with a lot of that stuff. But I do think that Jimmy has a lot of that with a lot of his teammates, in that he's got a lot of times where he vibes with different guys. This kind of making it seem like in this story, like once Max Strus was gone, it all crumbled. I don't know. I don't know. Because here's what I would say to that. I would say, if you really broke it down, the next year after Strus left and Strus got the bag from Cleveland, which he deserved, I would say it was arguable that Duncan Robinson the next year, after he had basically been ousted until he got to the playoffs and had his moments, because Strus really struggled in the playoffs, especially in the finals run. He was awful. He was, couldn't hit a shot. Duncan Robinson had that great game too. But the next year coming back, I would say that Duncan Robinson had a really big resurgence with the Miami Heat. And so, and then he ends up having the bad back injury. I mean, he really were a mess. I don't like to harp on excuses for the season, because they're still here as a healthier version of themselves, and they're still meandering around 500. But they really did. Between the Jimmy injuries, the Duncan Robinson injuries, the Tyler injuries, the Terry Rozier injuries, the Jaime injuries, Bam playing with a busted up, hip lower back. Yes, sure, Max Strus is one of the reasons why Jimmy Butler's. I just, this is kind of one of those things where it's like you look for other things. Gabe Vincent served as a stable two-way presence at the point, willing to defer to Butler, but likewise capable of scoring in bunches. He was also crucial to the chemistry mix as a fixture in Butler's cherished games of dominoes, either in transit or at team functions late at night. Again, I don't think that Jimmy Butler's having trouble finding domino partners. I don't know. Caleb Martin was the only one in the story who commented on this. And he had said, you hate to see stuff like that happen with the history that we had, the run that we made, and the stuff there. So Caleb Martin's unfortunate. He does not like what's going down there. And I didn't mention Caleb Martin's, whole thing in his relationship with Jimmy too. And this is what I would say. I can recall on like many occasions, I remember Jimmy Butler being asked about Jay Crowder and wishing Jay Crowder had a long future with the Heat, and the same thing for PJ Tucker, and the same thing for Goran, and then Goran he would trade for his other friend, and it's like, I'm not saying that these things are nothing. Because, yeah, maybe it's like when LeBron ended up getting fed up with the Heat, and they're like, well, what was one of the reasons? It's like, they amnestied Mike Miller. It's like, yeah, Mike Miller played no games. Of course, and it was just like one of those things that you just gas yourself up. It's like you're upset about other things, but you just throw other things onto the fire. So I'm not saying there's nothing to it. And then the whole thing about so I don't put a lot of stock into, the Max Strus, they lost and that was his guy. All right. I don't think you go into this dark corner and be like, I can't function anymore. Max Strus isn't here. I don't see Jimmy as being in that kind of mode. Like this, and this is the thing, to Jake's story, right? That basically takes all the juice out of his story in the first line. The ongoing standoff in South Beach, to be clear, centers around money. It's like, yeah, that's it. And then you're just kind of looking for stuff. We're like, yeah, but the chemistry really messed up. It's like, no, dude. The chemistry messed up when the Heat decided we're not paying him $112 million over 2 more years. That's when the chemistry messed up. All the stuff, everything else you guys hear, the Jimmy chemistry stuff, and anything that gets leaked by the Heat, particularly, unless it's like Jimmy Butler, unless they leak like Jimmy Butler was mother bleeping, Eric Spoelstra, getting into fist fights with teammates and, giving Chris Quinn swirlies. Unless it's like something like that, that's like legit. If you're going to hear things about like, hey, Jimmy doesn't talk to the media all the time. Jimmy doesn't go to all the team functions. Jimmy doesn't do interviews with local TV. Jimmy doesn't do with the local TV broadcast. Jimmy doesn't charter with the team. Jimmy stays at Airbnbs. Like, I think all of these things are in the realm of like, all right, yeah, that I can see how that's annoying, but here's the facts of it. Why are these two teams? Why are they mad at each other? One, are the Heat annoyed by all that stuff? It's like, yeah, you don't put up with that stuff as much when you're not getting to the finals and getting to the Eastern Conference Finals. Jimmy Butler, do you put up with all of the Heat belittling or competitive nature or all of that stuff and their culture and regime? Do you put up with that when you don't feel like they're all the way invested in you? Probably not. So, as it has been with other stars, it does wear. It typically, the thing that does happen though is like, and I don't know if this will be the case with Jimmy, but it has been with others where like they go other places and they realize, oh, actually that professionalism was kind of great. And I kind of miss it. And I miss the accountability. Like you'll end up appreciating it way down the line, but in battles right now over leverage and dollars and all this type of stuff, like, dude, this was a bit, yeah, like this whole thing today, I was just like, all right, it was weird more than anything. It's like Kyle Lowry was fatigued. I'm like, I think Jimmy Butler was probably fatigued about Kyle Lowry not shooting either. I think Jimmy Butler was kind of annoyed by that. I'm sure they both got sick of each other, and I'm sure that they all still love each other. Like the last time they were in the building, the night where the Heat sent the Sixers into a tailspin, I mean, they were all him, Jimmy, Caleb, Kevin Love, Kyle Lowry. Dude, they were having a bromance hobnobbing hug fest. But Kyle was a good team. Like one thing, Kyle was like loved by a lot of the guys. Loved by Gabe Vincent. Kyle was loved by Bam Adebayo. Loved by Tyler Hero. Like he was loved by the other stars on that team. I do think that they had a big appreciation. Bam went on and worked out with the guy in Vegas, to go, to just go get to know his teammate after his first season there. But I don't know. This one today, I was like, all right, and people are wondering, hey, are the Heat leaking this? Here's the thing. I feel like I feel like the Heat leak piece for whoever does it, whoever has that stuff that's going to come out, I really hope that it's got a little bit more juice to he stayed at Airbnbs if there is something there. But this stuff to me is almost like, oh, people who have heard, oh, why are they annoyed with the Heat? This almost still feels like outside looking in, because the way they're talking about relationships on this, it just doesn't seem like everybody who's like all the way plugged in. Not that there's nothing to it, but it just kind of seems like piecing a lot of stuff. They're kind of throwing some stuff, and some stuff's accurate, but a lot of it's kind of like, not all the way. And then like how much of it matters. Because I don't think the Heat right now are in a spot where they really want to damage the Jimmy relationship, right? Like the Tim Hardaway thing, Tim went rogue. Like Tim doesn't work for the team. Tim's a Heat guy. He was on the radio. Tim's going to speak his mind. Tim Hardaway Jr., if you guys, or Tim Hardaway Sr., excuse me. But I don't really feel like you've gotten that stuff, because I do feel like the Miami Heat still got to figure this out, right? Like they still have to figure this out, and doing hit pieces on Jimmy Butler is not good for a trade market, and it's not good to try and bring him back into the fold of a team. I think that the Heat, if they want to have their revenge tour on it, okay, that time will come. I don't think that time is now, and I don't necessarily think that this felt Heat leaky to me. Maybe fringe people on the Heat, but I don't feel like this was like the inside league. Jimmy Butler's anybody with an Instagram can see that, dude. No disrespect to the story, appreciate it, but I just didn't. I don't know. I found it more weird than anything. This whole leak, dirty laundry that's going out there. It's like, all right, he missed shoot arounds, obviously not professional. Okay. The flying, we all knew. The relationship with Lowry being frosty, it probably was a two-way street. And we know that he loved Max Strus. Is that a reason that the chemistry has crumbled? I got no sale on that, dude. I'm sorry. I can't. And if there was going to be a guy out of those of Caleb, Gabe, and Strus, I could see Strus being the guy. But it's not the reason that the relationship has crumbled. Are you, what? Come on, dude. And the other thing about it is like, and I know this point has been made, but it's like, if you're Jimmy Butler, right? And so like, I don't really understand the point of the piece is like, oh, Jimmy Butler's upset that the Heat, one, that Caleb Martin didn't listen to the Heat. He listened to his agent, which was a big mistake. Two, that they didn't pay Max Strus. And three, that they let Gabe Vincent walk. But also, in the same breath, wanted them to do everything they could to go get Damian Lillard. Like, all right, their bleep up there is they didn't get Damian Lillard. Like, if you told me what was Jimmy Butler more upset about, not getting Damian Lillard or not keeping Max Strus, who's supposedly his friend, I'm going to say it's because he didn't get Damian Lillard. Like, to me, if you were to ask Jimmy Butler, hey, Jimmy, you love Kyle Lowry, you love Max Strus, what were you more upset with? Not getting Damian Lillard or Kyle Lowry getting traded to the Hornets and ending up with the Sixers? I think he's going to say not getting Damian Lillard. I think he would say not getting Donovan Mitchell, not getting whoever, not getting the guy to get over the goalpost, not these guys. All due respect. If you really had to ask Jimmy Butler, what is the real crumbling of the chemistry? It's money, but if you wanted to put fringe stuff on it, not being able to get that extra over the top piece here and it going to other East teams, that I would say was what pisses him off more than anything. If it's non-money stuff, then Strus or Lowry or, and then if I were to go with another non him getting his money but is getting his money, it would probably be like somebody else getting their money and him not getting his money. Like I would guess it would be those things more so than it would be, hey, they didn't keep Max Strus around. I can't do the thing where I flip him off.